They called him the Ghost of the Canyon, an Apache warlord so feared that even the U.S. Army kept its distance. Men swore his heart was forged from desert rock, hard as flint, untouched by mercy, and utterly incapable of love. I was nothing more than a woman haunted by a past that refused to loosen its grip, a noose already tightened around my future. What they called a mission was nothing short of a slow execution. Walk into an Apache stronghold, soften a killer, persuade him to sign a treaty. I went to save my own life, fully expecting to meet a beast. I never imagined that the so-called monster would be the first man to ever treat me like a human being. And I certainly never imagined that the one who made armies tremble would one day sink to his knees for me. The air in the cell tasted of rust and remorse. Mae Whitlock sat on the edge of the cot, shaking not from cold but from certainty. The Tucson Territorial Jail was suffocating with heat, yet tomorrow had already arrived in her mind. Tomorrow she would die. A narrow barred window carved the blazing Arizona sunlight into 3 crooked slashes across the stone floor. From outside came the steady thump of wood on wood. Thud, thud, thud. They were testing the gallows trapdoor. Mae closed her eyes. She felt no regret for pulling the trigger. Her husband Caleb Whitlock had been a violent drunk who swore he would kill her before dawn. She had simply acted first. But in 1885, the law had no patience for context. A woman who shot a man in the back, even to save herself, was a murderer. The iron cell door shrieked open against stone. Mae didn't look up until a shadow settled over her boots. Mrs. Whitlock came, a smooth, educated voice, utterly wrong for a place like this. She lifted her gaze and saw Silas Crown standing there. He looked flawless in his blue uniform, brass buttons, polished mustache, perfectly waxed. A handkerchief covered his nose as though the stench of desperation offended him. Colonel Mae said hoarsely, "Have you come to size my neck?" Crown chuckled as he stepped inside his guard, remaining outside. "You've got fire in you, Mae. Shame to snuff it out so young." "How old am I?" he mused. 26. 25, she corrected. A waste Crown sighed. He paced the cramped cell. "I'm offering you a bargain, Mrs. Whitlock. A full pardon signed by the governor himself." Mae's heart slammed against her ribs. She stood slowly. "And the cost? I won't warm your bed, Colonel. I'd take the rope first." Crown's eyes sharpened. "I'm not interested in your virtue. I'm interested in your skills. You taught school before marrying that brute, didn't you? You speak French. You understand diplomacy. Yes. Good. There's a problem in the Dragoon Mountains," Crown continued. "An Apache leader named Aren. They call him the Wolf. He's united 3 rival bands. He's cutting my supply lines, burning settlements, making me look foolish back east." "So send cavalry," Mae snapped. "I did. They never returned." "Washington wants a treaty," Crown said. "A photograph. Proof the West is civilized." "I've contacted Aren. He agreed to talks in 2 months. One condition. He wants to understand our papers before signing. He demanded a teacher. Someone neutral. Not army." Mae laughed, sharp and hollow. "And you chose me." "You've got nothing to lose," Crown replied coolly. "Refuse and you hang tomorrow. If you go, you may die. But if you survive 6 weeks, teach him enough English to grasp the treaty and bring him to the table. You walk free, $500 in hand." Mae stared at the fading sunlight. The hammering had stopped. The silence pressed harder than noise. "He'll kill me the moment I arrive," she whispered. "Perhaps," Crown said, glancing at his pocket watch. "But Aren follows a code. He asked for a teacher. I'm sending him one. So, Mae, do you choose the certainty of the rope or the unknown waiting in the mountains?" She studied his cold blue eyes and felt it in her gut. Crown was lying about something, but survival spoke louder than fear. "I'll go." Crown smiled, though his eyes remained empty. "Excellent. Pack your things, Mrs. Whitlock. You leave within the hour and dress plain. Aren already hates our kind enough." The ride lasted 3 brutal days straight into the bones of the Badlands. Mae Whitlock was escorted by a jittery lieutenant named Grant Holloway and 3 scouts who never loosened their grip on their repeaters. Tucson's dusty streets gave way to jagged, blood-red stone as the Dragoon Mountains rose ahead, ancient, unforgiving, and hostile to the bone. Heat poured off the canyon walls like fire from a forge. By the 3rd day, they reached a narrow choke point known as Dead Man's Gorge. Holloway reined in hard. "This is it, ma'am," he said, his voice shaking. He gestured toward a thin trail curling into the cliff shadows. "They've been tracking us for miles. 1 step farther, and we don't come back." Mae swung down from her horse. She wore a simple gray dress, its high collar choking in the heat, and carried a leather satchel, holding 2 books, a Bible, a slim guide to contract law, and a single change of clothes. "You're leaving me here?" she asked, forcing steadiness into her voice. "He knows you're coming," Holloway replied quickly, already turning his horse. "Good luck, Mrs. Whitlock. I truly hope you won't need it." Dust kicked up as the soldiers rode hard in retreat. Mae stood alone. The canyon fell deathly quiet. A hawk screamed overhead. Mae squared her shoulders. She had killed a man to stay alive. She could climb a hill. She started upward, walking for nearly an hour beneath the hammering sun, sweat soaking her bonnet. Just as her legs threatened to give out, she rounded a bend and stopped cold. They were waiting. 12 of them. Apache warriors painted in clay and ash, so perfectly fused with the stone that she hadn't seen them until she stood 10 feet away. Rifles and bows rested easy in their hands, faces carved from stone. At their center sat a man astride a massive black stallion. He wore no shirt, only a worn leather vest. Bronze skin marked by scars crossed his chest and shoulder. His hair hung long and black, tied back with a strip of red cloth. But it was his eyes that iced her blood, dark, sharp, and burning with controlled hatred. This was Aren. He said nothing. He only studied her, the plain dress, the pale skin burned red by the sun, the hands that shook despite her resolve. Mae cleared her throat, recalling the instructions drilled into her. "Show no fear. My name is Mae Whitlock," she said, her voice echoing off the canyon walls. "I was sent by Silas Crown to teach you." Aren nudged his stallion forward. The animal loomed over her. Aren leaned down until his face hovered inches from hers. She smelled sage sweat and danger. He spat onto the dirt beside her boot. Then he straightened and snapped a command in his own tongue. 2 warriors seized Mae by the arms. "Wait," she cried. "I'm here under a flag of truce." Aren ignored her. He turned his horse and rode on. The warriors didn't drag her, but they shoved her forward, forcing her to stumble to keep pace. She wasn't being welcomed. She was being taken. The camp lay hidden inside a natural fortress, a box canyon reachable only by the narrow path she had climbed. Wickiups of brush and canvas sprawled across the basin. Smoke drifted from cook fires, and the scent of roasting venison twisted her empty stomach tight. As they entered the camp, fell silent. Women froze at their work. Children stopped mid-play. Hundreds of eyes locked onto Mae. She felt stripped bare beneath them, a pale intruder, in a world that owed her nothing. The warriors pushed her toward the central fire. Aren dismounted with effortless control, handed his reins to a boy and faced her. "You," he said. The word was rough but unmistakable. Mae brushed dust from her dress. "Yes, I'm the teacher." "You are a spy," Aren said flatly, his voice rolling low like distant thunder. "I'm not," Mae answered, holding his stare with everything she had. "I'm a prisoner of my own people, Aren. If I refuse this task, they'll hang me. I don't serve the army." Aren stepped closer. He moved around her in a slow circle like a hunter testing a snare. His fingers lifted, brushing a loose strand of hair that had slipped free from her bonnet. Mae Whitlock flinched, but she held her ground. "Hair like dry grass," he murmured. "Skin like milk. You will burn in this place." "Then I'll burn," Mae replied evenly. But I'm here to work. Silas Crown said you wanted to read the treaty. I brought the books. Aren ripped the leather satchel from her shoulder and dumped its contents onto the dirt. The Bible and the law primer spilled out along with her brush and a small mirror. Without hesitation, Aren kicked the Bible straight into the fire. No Mae lunged, but a warrior yanked her back. She watched the pages curl and blacken. That, Aren said coldly, is the white man's lies. He picked up the law book and held it high. This, he continued, shaking at once, is the white man's trick. It's the law, Mae said, breath ragged. If you want to defeat them, you have to understand how they think. Aren studied her in silence. Something flickered in his dark eyes, brief, sharp curiosity. He threw the law book back into her chest. She barely caught it. You sleep there. He pointed toward a torn, sagging wickiup at the edge of camp near the dogs. You work with the women. You carry water. You scrape hides. If you work, you eat. If you don't, you starve. At night, if I am not tired, you teach. I'm not a servant, Mae snapped. I'm an educator. Aren laughed. It was a hard, humorless sound. Here you are, nothing. You are less than the dogs. Until you prove you can live, you are just meat waiting to rot. He turned his back and walked away. The first week was hell. Mae had once believed life with Caleb Whitlock had been hard. It had been nothing compared to this. The Apache women, led by a relentless matriarch named Nira, showed her no mercy. They dragged her from sleep before dawn and forced her to haul water from the creek up the steep embankment until her hands split and blistered. She scraped deer hides until her shoulders burned like fire. No one spoke to her, only sharp gestures and guttural commands. When the adults weren't watching children through stones. Mae did not break. She tore strips from her petticoat and wrapped her bleeding palms. She swallowed the insults. She worked until she collapsed, then stood and worked again. Every night she waited by the fire for Aren. He sat with his counsel and ignored her completely. 3 nights passed. Then 4. She stayed seated, clutching the law book, forcing herself awake. On the 5th night, a storm tore through the canyon. Thunder slammed the rock walls. Rain poured down in sheets. The camp vanished into shelter. Mae remained by the dying fire, soaked, shaking, pressing the book to her chest to keep it dry. Aren stopped when he saw her mud-smeared, drenched, stubborn as stone. Rain streaked through his hair as he stepped closer. Go inside, he ordered. We have a lesson. Mae said, her teeth chattering violently. I'm ready. You're freezing, Aren said. You'll die. Crown will say you killed me. Mae snapped, anger cutting through the cold as she tried to stand and slipped. And I don't care. I made a deal. I keep my word. Do you keep yours? Lightning split the sky, lighting her pale, unyielding face. Aren saw the raw blisters on her hands, the shadows beneath her eyes, the stubborn set of her jaw. He grabbed her arm. His grip was iron-controlled. He pulled her toward his lodge. Inside he growled, I won't. Inside, Aren said again, his voice dark. Before I drag you, we will read your paper. Mae Whitlock stepped into his lodge. Warmth wrapped around her, at once dry air, heavy with sage smoke and tobacco. A small fire glowed at the center. Furs covered the ground. The space felt close, too close. Aren entered behind her and pulled the flap shut, locking the storm outside. The lodge shrank with the sound. He tossed her a dry blanket. Dry off, he ordered, turning his back to grant her a thin strip of dignity. Then tell me what sovereignty means. Silas Crown used that word. Mae drew the blanket tight around her shaking shoulders and settled by the fire, opening the damp book. Her heart raced, not from fear now, but from a charged tension that filled the lodge. She read. Hours passed. Mae broke down the language of land ownership, borders, rights. Aren listened with an intensity that unsettled her. His mind was sharp, razor sharp. His questions sliced through the legal fog, laying bare the hypocrisy buried in American law. So Aren said, leaning in firelight, dancing across the scars on his chest. This paper claims the land belongs to a great father in Washington, a man who has never seen it. He has never bled on it. How can he own what he does not know? It's a system of government, Mae said, quietly distracted by the hard line of his jaw. It isn't fair. Then it's power, Aren said. Power, she echoed. He studied her, really studied her. You understand power, Mae Whitlock. You killed a man. She went still. How do you know? Crown sent a letter with you, Aren said. He told me everything. He said you were dangerous. Mae dropped her gaze. He was my husband, Caleb Whitlock. Hurt me. I stopped him. Silence thickened the air. Good, Aren said softly. Mae looked up, stunned. A woman who fights is a woman worthy of respect, Aren continued. He reached out his rough fingers, brushing the bruise on her cheek left by a branch earlier that day. The touch burned. The women here think you are weak. I watch you haul water. I see you wait in the rain. His hand lingered. The lodge seemed to lose its air. Mae's breath caught. She should have stepped back. She should have been afraid. This was the fiercest Apache alive, the killer the army feared. Yet in his eyes she saw not a savage, but a man carrying the weight of a dying world. For the first time in her life she felt seen. We're done for tonight, Aren said abruptly, withdrawing his hand as if scalded. Go sleep. Mae sprang up, clutching her book, and fled into the rain, her heart pounding with a rhythm she didn't recognize. She told herself it was only the rush of survival. She told herself she could afford no feeling for him. But lying later beneath cold, damp blankets, she knew she was lying. The taming had begun, and she no longer knew who was taming whom. 2 weeks blurred into exhaustion and red dust. Mae Whitlock was no longer the soft-handed schoolteacher from Tucson. Her skin darkened beneath the sun to the color of weak tea. Her hands hardened to leather, muscles she never knew. She had tightened across her back and arms. She learned the camp's rhythm, how to lower her eyes around warriors, how to move without sound, how to anticipate the demands of Nira, the iron-willed matriarch who ruled the women's work. Nira never offered kindness, but the lash of the willow switch stopped. That counted as progress. Nights, however, belonged to Aren. Each evening, no matter how drained she was, he summoned her. Lessons shifted from words to arguments. Aren's mind was a steel trap. He devoured English not to please white men, but to turn their language into a weapon. Between them, tension simmered, unspoken constant. He watched her lips as she read. She caught herself watching the flex of his shoulders as he fed the fire. Two lone predators trapped in the same cage circling, waiting for one to yield or strike. One morning, the camp woke buzzing with restless energy. The scouts came back at dawn with word of a massive elk herd moving through the northern high valley, enough meat to carry the camp through winter. Aren stepped out of his wickiup, dragging a black stripe of paint across his cheekbones, the hunter's mark. He spotted Mae Whitlock hauling wood at the edge of camp. Whitlock, he snapped. He never used her first name. Get your horse. Mae dropped the bundle. I'm supposed to stay and help scrape hides. You're coming with me, Aren said. You need to see the land if you're going to talk about who owns it. It wasn't a request. Mae fetched her bonnet and swung onto the skittish mare they allowed her to ride. Nira watched them leave, spitting into the dirt. The old woman didn't trust the white woman, but she trusted the way her chief looked at the white woman even less. The hunting party rode out 6 warriors, Aren and Mae, climbing deeper into the Dragoon Mountains, where the air thinned and pine resin cut the heat. For 2 days, they tracked the herd. Mae kept pace without complaint, sleeping on bare ground beneath a single blanket, chewing dried meat that tasted like ash. She felt Aren's gaze on her, constantly weighing her for weakness. She gave him none. On the 3rd day, they cornered the elk in a box canyon. The hunt was fast, brutal, and clean. From a ridge, Mae watched Aren drop a massive bull with one arrow, his bond to the animal and the land undeniable. It was savage, yes, but there was a raw beauty to it that stirred something long buried inside her. They dressed the kill through the afternoon, spirits lifting. Even the stoic warriors cracked smiles, already tasting the feast. As they loaded quarters onto pack horses, a rifle shot split the canyon. A young warrior, Koa, barely 16, collapsed with a hole punched through his chest. Chaos exploded. Warriors scattered for cover. Aren grabbed Mae by the waist and hurled her behind a fallen pine, diving beside her as bullets shredded the wood where they'd stood. "Stay down!" he roared, drawing his Winchester. "Who are they?" "Soldiers," Mae shouted over the gunfire. Aren popped up, fired twice, and dropped back. Worse. The Iron Riders. Mae's blood iced over. Scalp hunters, men who collected bounties for Apache hair, men, women, even children. The lowest filth in the territory. There were at least 20 of them, judging by the muzzle flashes across the opposite ridge. They held the high ground and the numbers. They were pinned. Screams of men and horses tore the air. Gunpowder burned the throat. Lead thudded into flesh. Another Apache went down, shot through the neck. They were being butchered. Aren turned to Mae, eyes blazing with battle fury. He shoved a heavy Colt revolver into her hands, sun-hot metal biting her palms. "Can you shoot?" The weight dragged her back to Tucson, to Caleb Whitlock's drunken rage, the split-second choice, the thunder of the shot. "Whitlock, can you shoot?" Aren shook her shoulder. "Yes," she whispered, gripping the cold steel. "If they take you alive," Aren said grimly, "you'll beg for death before they give it." He pointed to a narrow rock fissure behind them. "When I draw fire, you run. Don't stop." "No," Mae said. Aren stared, stunned for a heartbeat. "Do as you're told. I'm not leaving you," she said, voice shaking but steady. She cocked the hammer. "I can fight." Before he could answer, 3 attackers broke cover and charged downhill, howling, bearded, filthy men in greasy dusters. Aren rose, his rifle pumping. He dropped the first man cold. The second spun as a bullet shattered his leg. The third, a giant with a red beard and a sawed-off shotgun, kept coming. The man leveled the shotgun at Aren's bare chest. Aren's rifle clicked empty. Time stretched thin. Mae saw the grin spread beneath the red beard as the finger tightened on the trigger. She saw Aren brace. Without thinking, Mae rose over the log. She didn't see a man. She saw a threat. The same shadow that had once lived behind Caleb Whitlock's eyes. Mae Whitlock raised the heavy. Colt drew in a sharp breath and squeezed the trigger. The recoil slammed her wrist. The blast cracked the canyon open. The red-bearded giant Hank Dobbs snapped backward as a clean blue hole bloomed in the center of his forehead. He fell onto the rocks, dead before he hit the ground. For a single heartbeat, the world went still. Aren stared at Mae. She stood rigid, smoke drifting from the barrel, her face drained of color, eyes wide with shock. A bullet tore past Mae's ear, yanking her back to life. She dropped behind the log beside Aren. When he looked at her again, something had changed. The contempt was gone. The doubt was gone. In its place burned something fierce and dangerous. "Good shot," he grunted. He reloaded his Winchester. "Now we finish it." The fight dragged on for another brutal hour, gunfire, echoing rocks, splintering, men screaming. But Mae's shot had broken them. With their leader down and surprise lost, the Iron Riders finally pulled back. When the last echo faded, the silence pressed heavier than the noise had. 4 Apache warriors lay dead, including young Koa. 7 scalp hunters rotted in the sun. Mae slumped against the log, shaking so hard she couldn't stop. The rush drained out of her, leaving her hollow and sick. She had killed again. A shadow fell over her. Aren stood there, a blood-soaked cloth tied around his left arm where a bullet had grazed him. He gently pried the empty revolver from her locked fingers. He said nothing. He only held out his hand. She stared at it, scarred, lethal, a warrior's hand, and took it. He hauled her up, pulling her closer than necessary. For one suspended moment, their bodies brushed hard muscle against soft curves, charged with the raw electricity of surviving death together. "You are not only a teacher, Mae Whitlock," he said quietly, using her name for the first time. His voice was rough as stone. "You have the heart of a lobo." Then he turned away to tend the fallen. Mae watched him go, her heart pounding as a terrifying truth settled in. She was no longer afraid of him. She was afraid for him, and that was far more dangerous. The return to the stronghold was heavy with grief. Women wailed for the dead, their cries echoing through the canyon, chilling Mae to the bone. But something had shifted. Mae rode in behind Aren, spine straight, the Colt tucked into the sash of her dress. The tribe no longer stared at her with open hostility. The warriors had told the story. The white woman had stood her ground. She had spilled blood beside them. Even Nira, when Mae brought her water that evening, gave a short nod instead of a glare. It was the closest thing to forgiveness she would ever offer. That night the air inside Aren's lodge was thick and charged. Mae sat by the fire pretending to read, but the words blurred. Aren sat across from her, shirtless, struggling to rebind the wound on his arm with one hand. Frustration tightened his jaw. Mae closed her book. "Let me." He hesitated, then gave a rough nod and moved closer to the firelight. Mae knelt before him. Up close, he was overwhelming, the heat of his skin, the scent of sage and sweat. The broad expanse of his chest, marked by scars and ritual. Her hands trembled as she unwound the bloodied cloth. The wound was deep and angry. "It needs to be cleaned properly," she murmured, "or it will fester." She dipped a cloth into water mixed with herbs Nira had provided. When the cool fabric touched raw flesh, Aren hissed, his stomach tightening hard. "I'm sorry," Mae whispered. "It is nothing," he growled, staring past her, refusing to look down. To reach the wound, Mae had to step between his knees. The position was deeply yielding, intimate enough to send a sharp current through them both. Mae Whitlock could feel the heat of Aren's thighs close to her waist as she worked with careful precision, cleaning the wound. He didn't flinch again. He only watched her, watched firelight glint in the pale gold of her hair, watched the focus crease her brow. "Why did you shoot that man?" Aren asked quietly. The lodge hushed around them. "You could have let him kill me. You would have been free." Mae paused, her hand resting near the wound on his arm. "Those men," she said softly, "they were monsters. They would have done worse than kill me." "Is that the only reason?" Aren pressed. His dark eyes held hers, demanding a truth she hadn't yet faced herself. "You're the only one here who's treated me with anything close to honor," Mae answered. "And I made a bargain. I have to keep you alive to sign that treaty." Aren let out a harsh laugh. "The treaty? Silas Crown's paper lies. It's your only chance," Mae pleaded, lifting her gaze. "The army is coming more every day. You can't fight the whole world." "I can fight until I die," Aren said simply. "That is our way. Better to die standing than live on my knees in their reservations." He looked down at her, kneeling there, and something in his expression softened a fracture in stone. He reached with his uninjured hand, tilting her chin up. His thumb traced her lower lip, rough skin, against soft. "You're too brave for Crown," he murmured. "He doesn't deserve you." Mae's breath caught. Heat thickened the air. Aren leaned in, slow and deliberate. She knew she should pull away, knew how impossible this was. A condemned white woman and an Apache war leader, but her body betrayed her. She leaned toward him. Their lips hovered inches apart when the lodge flap was thrown open. They sprang back like startled youths. Tarek stood there, agitated, speaking fast in Apache and pointing toward the camp's edge. Aren's face hardened into command. He rose the moment shattered, seized his rifle. "Stay here," he ordered Mae, then vanished into the night. She was left trembling lips, burning with a kiss that never happened. 3 days passed. The parley with Silas Crown was only a week away, and tension coiled through the camp. Warriors honed blades and checked rifles. They prepared for peace while bracing for war. Mae felt a growing sickness she couldn't shake, centered on the supply drop Crown had sent 2 weeks earlier, the so-called goodwill that had opened the camp to her. The crates, heavy wood stamped U.S. Army quartermaster sat near the camp's heart beneath a tarp. Aren had forbidden them opened until the treaty was signed. He would not accept charity before honor. That afternoon, with Aren out on patrol and the women grinding corn, Mae noticed 2 boys near the crates. One lifted a corner of the tarp. Suspicion struck like ice. Crown was a snake. Why would a snake offer gifts? No one watched her now. Trust had loosened the eyes on her back. Mae crossed to the crates, waved the boys off. Go play by the river. She stood before the stack. The top crate read, Rifles Model 1973. Beneath it, .45 caliber ammunition. On the surface, it made sense, arms as a sign of trust. But something felt wrong. Driven by instinct, Mae grabbed a pry bar used for tent stakes. Heart pounding, she wedged it under the ammunition crate's lid and shoved. Nails shrieked. The lid sprang open. Inside were neat cardboard boxes of cartridges. She opened one. The rounds gleamed brass and perfect, but they felt wrong. Mae lifted one. Too light. She shook it. It whispered like sand. With shaking fingers, she pried the bullet free with her teeth. Fine dust spilled into her palm. She gasped, the casing clattering to the ground. It was dummy ammunition fit for drills and nothing more. Panic surged through Mae Whitlock as she turned to the rifle crate and forced it open. Inside lay 10 gleaming Winchester repeaters packed in grease, flawless at first glance. She dragged one free and wiped the metal clean. She worked the lever. It resisted. Frowning, she examined the firing pin. It had been filed down just enough to keep it from striking a primer with real force. These weren't gifts. They were coffins. The truth struck her like a blow. Silas Crown never intended to sign a treaty. He meant to draw Aren and his warriors into the open, fatten their trust with false weapons, then slaughter them when the shooting began. When the ambush came, the Apache would reach for rifles that could never fire. It would be a massacre, and she had helped make it possible. She was the distraction the teacher sent to keep Aren occupied while the snare was set. "What are you doing?" The voice was low, lethal, directly behind her. Mae spun. Aren stood there, returned early. His gaze moved from her ashen face to the open crates, then to the mutilated cartridge at her feet. His eyes went black. The fragile trust of recent weeks vanished, replaced by ancient fury. "You," he whispered the word, poisoned. Aren no Mae pleaded, raising her hands. "I didn't know. I swear I didn't know." He crossed the distance faster than thought. One hand closed around her throat and slammed her into the crates, stealing her breath. "Liar," he roared, face inches from hers. "You are Crown's whore. You came to blind me while he sharpened his knife." "I'm not," she choked, clawing at his grip as tears streaked the dust on her cheeks. "I just found them. Look at them," she gasped. "They don't work. He wants to kill you all, and you helped him." His fingers tightened. Darkness crept into her vision. She saw death in his eyes. He would break her neck right there. "Then kill me," she rasped, holding his gaze. "But don't take your men to that meeting. It's a trap. Please believe me." He stared at her chest, heaving. He saw terror, yes, but also the same defiance she'd shown facing Hank Dobbs. A woman about to die, spending her last breath to warn him. Crown would never have told a spy the guns were false. A spy would need to believe the lie. Aren's grip eased. Air burned back into Mae's lungs. "Why tell me?" he snarled, still pinning her. "Why not let us die and take your freedom?" Because you are the only man I've ever known who deserves to live more than I do, she sobbed. He froze. The truth of it cut through his rage. He looked at the woman he meant to break and saw the only thing in his world that hadn't shattered. He released her. She slid down the crates, coughing, rubbing her bruised neck. He loomed above her, breath ragged violence, draining into something raw and desperate. The betrayal was real. So was what burned between them. He hauled her up, not to strike, but to crush her against his chest. It wasn't gentle. It was collision. His mouth found hers. The kiss was fierce, born of fury, fear, and weeks of restrained longing. Mae didn't resist. She met him, arms locking around his neck, clinging as the world collapsed. The treaty was a lie, the peace an illusion. All that remained was the fire between them and the knowledge that death waited close. They broke apart only when reality crashed back in. Aren rested his forehead against hers, breath torn. For the first time, the fiercest Apache looked shaken. "We have to move," Aren whispered, his voice raw. "If anyone saw us, if anyone sees those crates open." Mae Whitlock nodded, her fingers still gripping the leather of his vest. "We need to close them. Make it look untouched." They worked in frantic silence. Mae smoothed the waxed paper inside the ammunition crate while Aren drove the nails back in with the heel of his hand, deadening the sound with a strip of buckskin. They re-greased the sabotaged rifle and slid it back into place. When they stepped away, the crates looked whole again, an intact lie sealed in wood. "Come," Aren said. This time he didn't seize her arm. He only motioned. It was an invitation, not an order. He led her past her small wickiup to the great central lodge where the council of warriors gathered. It was sacred ground, barred to women, forbidden to white captives. As they entered, the low murmur died. 12 men sat in a circle, pipe smoke hanging thick. Tarek, the warrior who had burst in earlier, leapt to his feet, outrage twisting his face. "You bring the white woman here," he snarled. "This is holy ground, Aren." "She is not a woman tonight," Aren said, his voice carrying the full weight of command. "She is a warrior who saw the enemy's blade before it fell." "Sit down, Tarek." Aren guided Mae to the center of the circle. "Tell them," he ordered. "Tell them what Silas Crown has done." Mae drew a steadying breath and faced men who had every reason to kill her. She squared her shoulders. "The guns are broken," she said clearly. "The cartridges are filled with sawdust. Crown will not sign a treaty on Friday. He plans to slaughter you while you hold empty weapons." A roar erupted. Knives flashed. "She lies." Tarek shouted. "She wants us to strike so the army can wipe us out. I proved it." Mae shot back, pointing to Aren. "I showed him." Aren raised a hand. Silence fell. "She speaks truth. I saw the powder myself. Crown thinks us children, dazzled by bright rifles too foolish to check the horse's teeth. Then we ride an older warrior," Saya bellowed. "Tonight, we burn Tucson." "No," Mae said. The lodge went deadly still. "If you attack Tucson," Mae continued, voice firm, "they'll send 5,000 soldiers. They have telegraphs. They have trains. You cannot win a war of numbers. Crown wants you to strike. He wants you to be the monsters his papers print." Aren looked at her, a glint of pride flashing. "Then what do you propose?" "Teacher beat him at his own game," Mae said. "He expects you to walk into his trap, so you do, but you don't pull the trigger." She knelt and traced lines in the dirt. "The meeting is at Blind Man's Bend, a box canyon. He'll place an honor guard here, open visible. But he's a coward. He'll hide a force, likely a Gatling gun, on this ridge." The men leaned in. They were listening now. "We take the fake rifles," Mae went on, mind racing, drawing on every lesson she'd ever learned. "We let him see them. Let him think you're proud and careless. Your real weapons stay hidden beneath your blankets. And tonight," she said, looking up at Aren, "you send your best climbers to the ridge. You cut his insurance before the meeting begins. When he gives the signal to fire," she finished, "nothing happens. A slow, dangerous smile spread across Aren's face. The hunter becomes the hunted. He scanned the circle. We do as she says. Prepare the men. The next 2 days blurred into careful deception. From the outside, the camp looked unchanged. Fires burning, children playing, women cooking. Inside the lodges, warriors stripped old Winchesters and Colts, cleaned them to perfection, and hid them beneath heavy ponchos. Mae worked beside them. She felt a belonging she had never known in Tucson's polite parlors. She was packed now. On the final night before they rode, the camp fell quiet. The tension was stretched tight as wire ready to snap. Mae Whitlock was inside Aren's lodge, wrapping strips of dried meat for the ride ahead. The fire had sunk to glowing coals. Aren entered without a sound. He had been praying with Ashen, the medicine man. Exhaustion lined his face, the weight of his people pressing him down. He watched her for a long moment. "You don't have to come tomorrow," he said quietly. "It will be dangerous. If bullets fly, you'll be standing in the middle." "I'm coming," Mae answered without looking up. "Silas Crown expects me there. If I'm not, he'll know." Aren crossed the lodge, took the meat from her hands and set it aside. He clasped her fingers. "Mae." He lowered himself onto the furs, drawing her down with him. They sat facing each other, knees touching. "I have only known war," Aren said softly, tracing her jaw with his knuckles. "My father died in it. My brothers died in it. I thought I would die alone with hate in my heart." He met her eyes, unguarded, vulnerable in a way no one else had seen. "But these weeks, you put something else there, something that makes me afraid to die." Tears brimmed in Mae's eyes. "I have nothing to offer you," Aren whispered, "but a hard life and a quick death. But tonight I am only a man." He leaned in and kissed her. This time there was no fury. It was slow, deep pleading. Mae melted into him, arms sliding around his neck. The lines between them race. History war dissolved in the firelight. "I don't want a soft life," she whispered against his lips. "I want this." He eased her back onto the furs. That night, amid sage smoke and the shadow of coming death, the Apache war leader and the school teacher did not sleep. They learned each other in breaths and touches, forging something stronger than any treaty, harder than iron. Hours before dawn, Aren rose onto his elbows, studying her sleeping face. He brushed hair from her cheek, reverent. Then he shifted, kneeling beside her, bowing his head, so his forehead touched her hand. The fiercest Apache who bowed to no king or general knelt in silent devotion to the woman who had saved his soul. "If I live," he whispered into the dark, "I will spend every day proving you were right not to hang." Blind Man's Bend simmered with heat and menace. Silas Crown sat at a folding table flanked by 50 cavalrymen, smiling as Mae and Aren approached. He slid the treaty across the white cloth eyes, bright with arrogance. "Sign," Crown ordered. "Perhaps I'll be merciful." Aren picked up the pen, then drove it into the wood, snapping it. "I will sign when your guns aren't packed with sawdust," he roared, kicking the table over. Crown snapped his fingers for the hidden snipers on the ridge. Nothing happened. A cavalry hat drifted down from the cliffs. Tarek and the Apache climbers stood high on the rocks, rifles raised. The trap had turned. "Kill them!" Crown shrieked, panic cracking his voice. The Apaches moved first. Aren's warriors flung off their blankets, revealing hidden working Winchesters. The canyon erupted. In the chaos, Crown lunged not for a gun, but for Mae. He dragged her into the open, jamming his revolver to her temple. "Stop!" he screamed. "Stop, or I blow her head off." The firing died. Aren stood in the smoke rifle trained on Crown's chest and couldn't shoot. Crown hid behind Mae, edging toward his horse. "Drop it!" Crown yelled. "On your knees, savage. Beg for her life." Aren looked at Mae, saw the fear there, and the wolf who bowed to no man lowered his rifle. He sank to his knees. In the red dust, pride surrendered for love. "Let her go," Aren said, voice low and lethal. I think I'll hang you both, Crown sneered. As he turned to mount his grip, slipped. Mae stomped her heel onto his boot and smashed her head back into his face. Crown howled. The shot tore harmlessly into the sky. Aren didn't rise. From his knees, he ripped a knife from his boot and hurled it with a roar. The blade flashed silver in the sun, flying straight and true. The knife slammed into Silas Crown's chest, sinking to the hilt. He reeled back, shock frozen in his eyes as the pistol slipped from his fingers. He looked once at Mae Whitlock, then at Aren before crumpling into the red dust, silent forever. The remaining soldiers saw their commander fall and the ridges lined with Apache rifles. Weapons clattered to the ground. The fight was finished. Aren didn't spare the soldiers a glance. He crossed the distance to Mae in a heartbeat. She sat in the dirt, shaking a thin line of blood at her lip. He reached her hands frantic, searching for wounds. Mae, are you hit? I'm fine, she breathed, catching his wrist to still them. I'm fine, Aren. It's over. He pulled her hard against him, burying his face in her neck. The mighty Aren, who had just broken the U.S. Army, was trembling. I thought I lost you, he whispered against her skin. When he put the gun to you, I died. Mae drew back and touched his face, smearing her own blood across his cheek like war paint. You knelt for me, she said, awe in her voice. You surrendered. I would burn the world to ash before I let you be harmed, he vowed, dark eyes blazing. The warriors gathered close but kept their distance. They had seen their leader bow to save this woman. They understood now. She was no captive. She was the heart of the tribe. Aren stood and helped Mae up. He looked at his people, then back to her. The treaty is dead, he said, kicking the shattered table. So is Crown. We'll go deeper into the mountains where they can't find us. He laced his fingers with hers. Will you come? It will be hard. We'll be hunted. Mae looked at the fallen colonel, then at the open sky and the jagged dragoon peaks. She looked at the man who had treated her as an equal partner and warrior. I don't want an easy life, Aren. She smiled and squeezed his hand. I just want to be where you are. Aren smiled, a true open smile that changed his face. He lifted her effortlessly onto his horse and swung up behind her. As they turned toward the mountains, leaving the wreckage of the old world behind, nothing needed to be said. He had been sent to be tamed. She had been sent to die. Instead, they found the only thing worth living for. The ghost of the canyon found his mate, and for the first time the wolf was happy. And that is the end of Mae Whitlock and Aren's journey from a death sentence in a prison cell to freedom in the wild mountains. If you enjoyed this Wild West romance, please hit the like button. It truly helps the channel. And tell me in the comments, do you think they survived the winter up in the mountains? Don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you don't miss the next story. A darker romance is coming next week that you won't want to miss. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video. All stories are created for entertainment purposes and may include fictional elements or dramatized interpretations inspired by historical settings. We use AI tools, voiceover visuals, scripts as creative assistants. However, all content is reviewed, refined, and edited by humans to ensure emotional authenticity and storytelling quality. We fully comply with YouTube's policies regarding AI-generated content and do not use any deep-fake techniques or misleading recreations of real individuals. All visuals and supporting materials are properly licensed. Sharing, re-uploading, modifying, or distributing any part of this content in any form requires written permission. We appreciate your support and respect for original creative work